Today I want to tell you about the top 5 myths in the homesteading community. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to Never Homestead. My name is Raul. In the last few years that I've been homesteading, I've seen a lot of confusion in the community over what homesteading looks like. And so I just wanted to take some time to go through the top 5 myths I've encountered about homesteading and explain to you what real homesteading looks like. But before we can do that, I think we need to first define what homesteading is. Especially in the modern context. Years ago, homesteading used to be families establishing themselves on some land and becoming self-sufficient. And even in the modern context, that hasn't really changed a huge amount. The old context was more about in a rural area. These days you get things like urban homesteading, farmsteading, and a number of other terms that get thrown around. But the core concept is still around self-sufficiency. So, having said that, let's dive into those 5 myths. Myth number 1, you have to homestead full-time. This is just simply untrue. There are a lot of homesteaders out there that homestead part-time, like myself, where I have a full-time job. There are others that have a part-time job and then they homestead the rest of the time. There are others where there's a couple and one of them works and one of them doesn't, or one of them does part-time work. There are also a lot of folks that are retired, and so they do have the time to do it full-time, as it were. Myth number 2, you have to have lots of money to homestead. This one is also simply untrue. A lot of people who do homesteading do it on a budget. They don't have a lot of money, and so they are very frugal, and they just spend money where it makes the most sense. And otherwise they might scrounge around on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or whatever and go and pick up stuff that is cheap, or they find reclaimed wood and those sort of things, just stuff that people are no longer using, and they use that. One of the things that I do is that I just save up bit by bit every month, and then when I have enough money I can make a big purchase. For instance, recently I needed an outdoor office because I work from home, and I wanted a place where I can work without being interrupted by my family. And so I saved up over months, and when I had enough money I bought a portable building. You can do this too. It's really easy. Also, a lot of people who seem to have large equipment, they tend to borrow equipment from friends. There are very few that actually buy equipment, or it's equipment that they've bought in the past before they started homesteading, when they were still working full-time or whatever. Done a similar thing as me, saved up bit by bit and then bought the large equipment. I don't have a lot of friends around here with large equipment, so if I do need something, then either I have to hire somebody to do it, or I have to do it manually myself. I mean, there was the whole driveway that I raked, the gravel that I raked. It's just, you put in the hard work, you do it by hand, and you get it done. Myth number 3, you have to be off-grid to be a homesteader. This is probably the biggest misconception I've seen, and I totally disagree with it. Depending on where in the country you are, sometimes off-grid is not an option. We live in Arizona, and with summertime temperatures going far above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 36 degrees Celsius, air conditioning is almost a need rather than a want. Having said that, I am actively looking at sizing a system for us, but it's going to be a really big system, and it's going to cost a lot of money to get that up and running. It's a huge upfront cost. So being off-grid is not always an option. Myth number 4, you have to live in an alternate house. in order to be a homesteader. Again, another absolute myth. Some homesteaders buy properties with a house that's already here. Some people buy a large plot of land that has nothing and they build something up. Just because you want to be a homesteader doesn't mean you have to build some alternative house like a log cabin or a earth bag house or something like that. It's just untrue, you know. We're all working towards self-sufficiency, and just because you have a traditionally built house doesn't mean you're not self-sufficient. It just means you have a traditionally built house. And that's all. Myth number 5. You have to be 100% self-sufficient to be a homesteader. Again, this is wrong. Most homesteaders out there on YouTube are not 100% self-sufficient. They depend on something somewhere. At least YouTube and the internet, you know. So they're not 100% self-sufficient. But working your way towards self-sufficiency, or being as self-sufficient as possible, is what you actually want to do. So to be a homesteader, you want to make sure that you are as self-sufficient as you possibly can be. Well, here you can see my office right behind me. It's just an empty shell at the moment. I still need to actually build the interior of the office, so I need to put up walls, put insulation in, and all the rest of that. But I will hopefully have some videos on that, and you can have a look and see what I'm doing in there. But I hope this video was helpful to you. I've seen these myths floating around, and the reality is that in the modern homesteading movement, homesteading is what you make it. You don't have to be off-grid. You don't have to be 100% self-sufficient. It's what you make it. The only goal is that you are growing towards self-sufficiency. I think that's the most important thing, that you're trying to be as self-sufficient as you possibly can. That, for me, is the definition of modern homesteading. So wherever you are, whether you're out in the country and you've got 40 acres of land, or you're in the city and you have 1/4 of an acre, as long as you are working your way towards self-sufficiency, in my books, you are a homesteader. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!